Hello and welcome to the Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong. I'm Alex.
I'm Julio, and thank you for listening. If you like what you hear, head over to Apple Podcasts to subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. Help promote the algorithm and spread the word.
You can also find us on SoundCloud to subscribe and review, and don't forget to visit our main website, wearethecontrarians.com.
Follow us on Twitter at Contrarian Prime, and to like us on Facebook, visit facebook.com/Contrarian Prime.
And if you have the willpower to keep up with our pretentious ramblings, you can follow us individually at Contrarian Alex for myself and at Ovnio for Julio. That's OVNIO.
Now, time for the podcast. All right, I am recording for Contrarians Corner.
Hello and welcome back to the Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong. My name is Alex, joined as always by my co-host Julio. Julio, how are you doing on this? It's Thursday, right?
Yes, I had to think about it for a moment.
I know when the weekends are, but that's about it. Every other day seems to blend together these days. So Thursday evening in Austin, Texas. Julio, how are you holding up?
I was blown away when I found out that this is actually a true story. Did you know that? I don't know if that came up on your... it's inspired by...
Are you not...
Well, I mean, I'd always heard about the Salem trials.
Are you not familiar? Okay, the Salem witch trials?
Right. But I always thought of that...
Have you never watched The Lords of Salem?
Yes. I mean, we've talked about the Lords of Salem.
That was all based on a true story, too.
Yes.
Okay, so not to talk over you there. So what was your knowledge of this?
I always thought it was an allegory for the communist witch hunt from the 50s. So I always thought that it was just Arthur Miller being clever, and he couldn't write about McCarthy, so he wrote about Paul Scofield and Jeffrey Jones. You know what I mean? Like, I knew that Salem was a real place, and I knew that witches, they believed in witches, but I didn't think that there was actually the idea that this sort of shit would happen more than once in the history of a country. It just blows my mind. I know it was a long time in between instances, but I don't know. It was crazy. I really thought that Arthur Miller was just kind of taking, extreme liberties with that, with the town of Salem. And no, come to find out, it was actually, the basics are all there.
Yeah, the Salem witch trial. It's I likely have a knowledge of it from childhood because The Simpsons did an episode. One of their Halloween episodes was loosely based on it, but I could see that, like, crocodile tears isn't really a crocodile crying. So I understand sometimes you hear things and maybe not understand the backstory to them. But yeah, this was, God, I don't even remember if I would have learned about this in school, the Salem witch trials, that is. Not the Crucible. I didn't learn about the Daniel Day-Lewis Winona Ryder movie in school. But
how about the play?
Maybe that's why I'm so familiar with this specific iteration of the story. But this, and like the laughing in like science class of like, the people that were burned at the stake for saying that the Earth revolved around the sun or the Earth was round and stuff like that. And that definitely falls into this category of people that refute scientific evidence in front of them despite people dying in thousands. Oh, I'm sorry. That's COVID-19. What we did one recently that we said applied so much. Oh, it was just our last episode, Edward Scissorhands.
Yes, my thought as I was watching this anxiety-inducing movie in our current situation was that maybe it was not the best idea psychologically to schedule Edward Scissorhands and the Crucible back to back, because the mob mentality in both movies is just I don't know, it drives you insane.
It's so weird on paper, which it was when this was presented. There's no way that I thought, man, watching Edward Scissorhands and the Crucible back to back are going to be this just like moral, mental beatdown just because of everything that's going on in the world currently. So that's a really long opening, very long introduction to the Contrarians. Again, my name is Alex, joined by Julio. If this is your first time listening, we don't always take as long to get to the cut of our jib as we do. And for our podcast, what we do, our little gimmick here, is we like to rage against the Rotten Tomatoes machine. Find a movie that's highly rated on Rotten Tomatoes, also known as certified fresh, make a case for maybe why it shouldn't be. Opposite side of that coin, we find a nasty green splotch, those rotten movies, typically 30% and below, and try to find the positive merit in them. We alternate episodes, positive or certified fresh and rotten. We're currently ensconced in the summer of Winona, just going through the highs and lows of Miss Winona Ryder's filmography. Julio, this one's going to be a little different as we visit, the 1996 box office bomb of The Crucible.
Yes.
Starring, of course, Miss Winona Ryder and Sir Daniel Day-Lewis. Now, this movie, I believe, is at 68% on Rotten Tomatoes, so how are we going to go about this, sir?
I just realized that we didn't agree on a position, but I went rotten, right? It's considered fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, so I figure we treat it as rotten here. And then when we get to real
I have
talk,
both positive and I was about to say I have both positive and negative things to say about it. So while for the first portion of this podcast, Contrarians Corner, we're going to argue against every fighting bit of that 68%. If you want to know how we really feel about this movie, hang around for the second portion titled Real Talk. Now, Julio, for Winona Virus 2020, hashtag Ride or Die. As you put together this lineup, was this specifically saved towards the end, or were you just kind of plugging holes where they needed to be, or was this one you kind of wanted to save, before we got to dessert? This is kind of pre-main course. This is like the beginning of the main course, like we're cutting our steak.
Right, yeah. We're done with the bread. No more bread because we need to save space for the dessert, for Stranger Things. So if you guys have been paying attention, every month we've had a positive and negative, and then a bonus episode that is kind of a low positive. In this case, is the Crucible. We had Alien Resurrection and we had Dracula the last couple months, and easily we could have gone with position wise. We could have swapped any of those. We could have done Crucible in the first month, but I kind of feel like it's good that we needed to go from Winona and Dracula with her corsets and just all the sexiness to another kind of period piece Winona here, and with her, what would you call what she's wearing? Her Puritan clothing.
It's very Amish, at least what I've learned to believe or understand is the Amish wardrobe. It's very maid-like. She's got her bonnet and her apron and whatnot.
It's not sexy. That's
I think point. It is not. I think it was important to save this towards the end so we could go through all the things to see what Winona can do, to learn what she definitively cannot do.
Oh, God.
And that is... and whatever this movie is.
She cannot communicate with the devil? Is that what you're saying?
She was not made for Broadway, I think is what I would say based on this movie.
We shall battle it out on Real Talk, but I know that because I'd only seen this movie once back when it opened, and to me, it was always one of those where it had a lot of Oscar buzz before it opened, and then it completely disappeared afterwards. I think that maybe John Allen got a nomination.
I was about to say, it did get 2 nominations in the end.
Did DDL get one too?
He did not, but it did get the nomination for Best Adapted Screenplay.
Okay.
Which is weird, because we come to think of Daniel Day-Lewis now that basically anytime he just fucking goes to the grocery store, he gets an Oscar nomination for it.
Every time he puts a mask on before going to the grocery store,
yeah.
He gets nominated.
He puts it's like a cheetah print mask, and he puts it on and just walks into Nando's to get some chicken. So at this point in my life, 1996, November 27th of 1996, when this movie was released, I definitely would have known who Winona Ryder was, but I would have been 9, and I would have had no clue who Daniel Day-Lewis was, aside from, I've spoken on this podcast many, many times about the completely fuzzy and chocolate-covered memories I have of going to the video store, and especially back in those days, the VHS covers, the more colorful, when the job was, or the point was to make them stick out to you. A lot of times they were just the movie posters, but then when they would send them to video stores with the intention of catching John and Jane Q. Public. They would kind of spice them up a little bit. I say all that to say my first ever exposure to Daniel Day-Lewis was my parents never bought movies, really. Like, the majority of VHSs in our collection were movies for my sister and I, just Disney movies, comedies, wrestling, if you can believe it. And but I do remember they would always rent movies when there was big buzz about them, because having kids, you can't really go to, the big movies. I just remember staring at the box art, the cover of Last of the Mohicans for just so long, with him and his like long flowing hair in it. Like, it looked like, to me, a young kid knowing zero about the movie, it looked to me like an adult version of a Disney movie. I don't mean like a porn way, but like just like what the natural progression of a Disney prince and translated into real life looks like. Because, it's like sepia tone, and his like muscles are poking out and his hair is long and flowing. So that was my first exposure to Daniel Day-Lewis. But I say that to say I would have been familiar with him, but this is certainly not the type of movie I would have gone out to the theater to see at the time. I'm trying to remember, it was probably The Boxer, I think, was maybe the first movie of his I ever really watched, or My Left Foot in high school or college.
Gangs of New York?
I still have never seen Gangs of New York.
Oh.
I've gotten relentless shit from my dad about that. But and then, of course, in 2007, he would star in There Will Be Blood and quite literally change my life forever with that movie. So he's come a long way from his stringy, nasty fucking Keanu Reeves and Bill and Ted wig that he's wearing in this movie to where he is now. The Phantom Thread's the last thing he made, right?
Yeah, I think that's it. I think he's retired.
Oh, really?
That was what they were saying. But, I mean, Kevin Smith retired once. If Kevin Smith can't stay away, I doubt DDL can.
Do not ever compare Kevin Smith and Daniel Day-Lewis in my presence, sir. So The Crucible is, again, based in Salem, Massachusetts in 1692. This, not right off the bat, but this is in the midst, or the beginning of the Salem witch trials. Before we can get to the trial, we got to commit the crime first, and the movie starts off with a gaggle of women and girls alike. There are some young women, some little girls, and some full-grown women in the middle of the forest somewhere, just dancing and, I guess, conjuring up spirits.
Yeah, I think I've made this point before at least a couple of times, but it's always worth pointing out. We get a black woman. She's the one leading them into this. And I'm already kind of, much like with Jeffrey Jones, the novelty has worn off. It used, like, for a couple of times during this summer, I was like, hey, they finally got like a black person on a Winona Ryder movie, because her filmography has been pretty white. But here, I was cautious, and I had right to be, because this poor black woman goes through hell within the first 20 minutes of the movie. So the representation was there, but it was mean-spirited.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable, I think would be the mildest way to put it. But they are, I think they start a fire, they're chanting, they're casting aspersions, and they're, I guess, what they believe are spells on the local townspeople. Winona Ryder wishes death upon Goody Proctor, who we come to find out is Miss Joan Allen, who plays the wife of Daniel Day-Lewis, John Proctor. We find out shortly into the movie why she wishes death upon this specific person.
How long did it take you to figure out that Goody is all-time speak for Mrs.?
It took me a while. I thought Goody was just like Joan Allen's like nickname.
Yeah, but then they're
just
calling
like Screech.
Yeah, they're calling everybody Goody.
Yeah, I eventually caught on to it. I haven't even researched it yet, so I'd be fascinated to see if that's supposed to be like a not necessarily derogatory, but kind of like a status or a to like keep you in line type thing. You're just a goody.
A goody is not as good as a ma'am.
Yes, there you go. There's goody, there's dame, and then there's ma'am. But yeah, and then like the most metal part of this entire movie, Winona Ryder just like thrashes a chicken into a rock and then drinks its blood and wipes it on her face. It's one of the more metal things I've ever seen Winona Ryder do.
She learned from Gary Oldman.
Yes, she did. All the while, Senator Kelly, Bruce Davidson himself, is just kind of watching this aghast from afar. He plays the character of Reverend Samuel Parris, and I think at first he's just kind of taken aback at the sight of a naked woman because as they're like slam dancing, one of the women just strips down stark naked, and he doesn't know what to make of it. But to be fair, I thought this was kind of a dream sequence. It wasn't well presented because like the lens is foggy and it's not in tone visually with the rest of the movie. So for a while, I thought this was supposed to be a dream sequence.
Yeah, when one of the women takes her clothes off, because it happens, it's like a long shot, so you don't really know who took her clothes off, and it's like, holy shit, did Winona Ryder just take her clothes off this early into the movie and this late in the summer of Winona? Because so far we haven't had any like really risque Winona shots.
At first, that's what I thought too. But the woman who took her clothes off was a woman. She was a sturdy gal, and Winona Ryder is very frail and thin. I was interested with who it was, but I could tell it wasn't Winona.
Well, I think that's what Bruce Davison was doing. He was trying to figure out who was naked before he decided if he was outraged or aroused. There you go. Winona's related to him. I think it's his niece, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to tell relationships with women in this movie just because
they're all goodies.
They're all goodies, and men have no problem hitting any of them. It's my Uber driver. Smack. Get back here. So cut to the next day, and the little girls that were present for this are comatose, allegedly. They're in their beds and unable to wake, and people figure, the devil's up to no good. This is quickly where it becomes like Trump supporter country, where the most plausible answer cannot be it. It's all a conspiracy created by the devil, which, Democratic Party.
It all connects.
Where the root of all evil is. Yeah, it's like the back of the dollar bill with the pyramid or the Illuminati. So
the two little girls are comatose. This is never explained, though.
They're faking it.
Right, but why?
I don't know. The movie does a terrible job of that, and like you expect it to like result in some like Reagan shit where not the president, the girl from The Exorcist, where like they monkey crawl out of bed or a crab walk, and their heads turn around and shit, but then they just eventually wake up like, I don't want to. And like, I miss my mom. And they don't explain why they're doing it. I guess like Winona's badgering the one while she's asleep, like shaking her violently, like, wake up, you little bitch.
But even then,
I think she like says something like, the girls are afraid they're going to get caught that they were hanging out with these women in the woods, I think.
So their solution
They're just worried they're not going to be goodies. They're going to be
baddies,
cast out as harlots. Yeah, baddies.
But their solution then is to just pretend that they're in a coma, which is, it draws more attention to them. I know they're kids and they're stupid, but the entire movie, it was nagging at me that all this came about so randomly, It was not part of nobody had a well thought out plan.
It's a horrible plan. That's what you do when you don't want to help mow the lawn. You act like you're asleep.
Oh. Just didn't want to go to school. So unfortunately, they took it too far. That's what you're telling.
One of the deleted scenes is like the girl has the thermometer in her mouth and she's running laps in her room to try to get her temperature up before Winona Ryder comes back in to check it. But this creates a hubbub throughout the township, the province of Salem. We are, unfortunately, Jeffrey Jones greets us again here on the Summer of Winona as he plays Thomas Putnam, which he just kind of seems like a local idiot. He definitely seems like if there was a bar in Salem, he would be spending most of his time there. And his hair.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
There are some people that can carry a wig and do period pieces, and there are some that shouldn't even try. This movie, definitely, it makes a case that Jeffrey Jones shouldn't have come near the 1800s ever.
This movie is like it's like one of those fucking veggie trays that you get at Whole Foods. Like the ones you get at like Walmart and Target, those are made for bread and butter Americans. But these ones you get at like Whole Foods or Sprouts that have like really weird like raspberries like in between the carrots and the celery. Like that's this movie. It's like this huge platter of all these things that you're like, yeah, I understand why this works here. It's like Daniel Day-Lewis. It's like, yeah, this works really well in this particular setting. Or, who plays Hale? That guy's perfect. And then you get to Jeffrey Jones, and it's like, an olive with a piece of pineapple in the middle that you bite into, and you're like, what the fuck is this doing here? This makes no sense. And that's him the entire movie. I mean, for better or for worse, Jeffrey Jones is who he is, for the worse. But in this movie, every time he was one of the people that every time he came on screen, I was just like, fuck, Now the illusion's gone. It makes as much sense as me or Julio being in a movie based in the 1600s.
Yeah, I mean, you can put a wig on us.
Like all that was missing. Yeah, all that was missing was a shot of like Jeffrey Jones checking his digital watch. Like, what time is it? Bruce Davidson confronts Winona Ryder. We haven't even talked about her character's name, Abigail Williams, called Abby in certain parts of the movie. She is
Goody Abby.
A bad person. No, that's Baddie Abby. She is a bad person. Amongst the worst people we've dealt with here on the Contrarians, I would venture to say. And some of the lines in this movie I just wrote down because they were so very much of the stage and not the screen per se. He, asks her, "Were you conjuring spirits in the forest?" And then she says something, in really bad delivery of, "What say you speak of?" And then he just backhands her, and it's just like, don't take that tongue with me. So he knows what's up. But he doesn't want to believe that she's involved in any kind of witchcraft or anything like that. He just, at this point, I think he's writing it off to girls will be girls at the same time.
Well, but also there's a PR element because he is, if I got it correctly, he is the main priest, some sort of. This town, Salem, does a really bad job of separating church and state because he seems to be a figure of authority there, but he's a preacher. And so let's say that he has a conflict of interest here. I guess he should report what's happening in the sense that, well, he's a priest and he might have witnessed a satanic ritual, but then at the same time, his popularity is on the decline, so he doesn't want the news of his niece being involved in this to spread out.
He's very concerned with her reputation.
Yeah. So he basically just tells Winona to just keep it quiet. He's going to keep it quiet. They're going to stop the testing.
Yeah. That's the end of the movie. They cut right before the shot of as everyone's hanging and Bruce Davidson says, "Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go to a very important building." And then he walks to the church and holds the Bible upside down, and the big flash bulb comes up and starts taking pictures of him. God, what a fucking idiot. But I believe this is when the first mention of Goody Proctor comes up about sullying her reputation. It has something to do with this conversation about how we need to keep Abigail's reputation intact.
Yeah, because she got fired from the Proctor household. So there's already rumors going around that she got fired for being a harlot or whatever the old-timey word is. She was a goody harlot.
No, it's harlot.
Harlot, just harlot.
No, yeah, Harlot Williams was her new name. Yeah, it's for all the movies and subject matter we've tackled, it was really hard not to laugh at the big point of contention and the divine rod in the ground. The lightning rod was like a dude just fucking a woman who wasn't his wife, and it causes this huge rift amongst the town. And it's like, man, that's just another day at the office for the fine people of Empire Records. This isn't anything new that we haven't tackled before. We build to the moment, and it is worth it because it's goddamn Daniel Day-Lewis making his debut on the Contrarians podcast. And what other way would you want it than him to be just a shot of him with the water in the background with a big old sickle just harvesting wheat out in the field? I couldn't think of a better way to debut Daniel Day-Lewis on the Contrarians than just that shot of him looking like a damn man.
He looks rugged. He has the hair, long hair, facial hair, dirty clothes, baggy pants.
He looks like how deodorant and cologne ads used to look until the country and the world became obsessed with the pretty man, the idea of the perfectly groomed and manicured man. This is definitely something I could see this in Old Spice ad back in the day, or if we ever tried to come up with a line, this is an idea for the Contrarians. We need to come up with a scent to it can go in all the department stores. It can be the rival to Axe. We can call it Sickle, and it can just have Daniel Day-Lewis on it. And in this movie, it'll have John Proctor on it. And it's you want to be this guy, so buy this and you will smell like him.
At the same time, he does look like he wouldn't wear deodorant.
Oh, no. And he did not. Did you bring that up because you read about his method acting for this?
No.
Okay. Good a time as any. Daniel Day-Lewis did not bathe or shower from the time filming began to when it wrapped in order to stay in character. So he would have been ripe.
Holy shit. I mean, I knew he was method, but did he also try to sleep with Winona Ryder just so that he would know for sure?
Oh, God. I know. I think she was like 25 when they made this, and he was just shy of 40. So it's like whatever. If they did have sex, it's whatever. At the same time, the way their characters are dressed and like presented, she looks so much younger than him. So like the first interaction between them, it was really weird. But I knew it was still going to be fine because it's Daniel Day-Lewis. So
he would never
steer me wrong. No. He'll tell his son he's an orphan and abandon all hope of a relationship with him and murder Paul Dano with a bowling pin before he takes advantage of an underage woman. I am confident of that.
He respects women.
He does. He has no desire to keep any other men on this planet, much as is evident in the movie 9. He just wants it all for himself. So Reverend Hale, which is essentially the DA for the purposes of this movie, is brought in to assist with the investigation of witchcraft and satanic practices and ridding the world of, or at least Salem, of the devil and his presence. Reverend John Hale, played by Rob Campbell.
Yeah, he's a Ghostbuster.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Because he's also, he's like an exorcist. They never call him an exorcist, but they treat him like he's an exorcist.
Rob Campbell, I pulled up his acting credits, and he's in Sex and the City, and I need to figure out which one he's in now.
You need to figure out who he hooked up with?
Yeah, exactly. Rob Campbell, a man of limited filmography. He hadn't really been into much, but definitely a man of stage, and according to his credits, was a graduate of the Yale School of Drama. And this is a guy, Mr. Rob Campbell, Reverend Hale, who was definitely up to task in this particular movie. But he immediately is like, no bullshit. It's funny the character arc his story has, because when he shows up, he's like, the detective that takes over the case that comes in and whips the sunglasses off and has some really quippy one-liner, and kind of looks at everything and says, "You know what you need to tell me."
He walks in triumphant. He knows what he's here to take care of. He's fought the devil before and he's won.
So he discovers that they had danced but they didn't try to summon. It's Bruce Davidson basically, again, in trying to keep his reputation intact, is just kind of playing the politician role of giving an inch when the person asks for a mile. He's like, yeah, they did this, but you don't really need to worry about that. They attend church, and this is basically where they explain why he's here, and these judges are coming to town to try to figure out what the fuck happened and what's going on here. And, we're going to see to this. And that's when Winona, I didn't know until this, it didn't look to me like she was the ringleader, but this is where she just rallies the troops like she's fucking Danny Zuko. And they all leave church together while the rest of the town is doing like a hymnal. And like 15 or 20 girls just get up and leave, and no one thinks it's weird. But again, they're the maids. Maybe they were supposed to be going back to make a sandwich for the owners of the
It doesn't surprise me that nobody would notice in this town, though, because they are just oblivious. What this movie felt to me like, in Parks and Rec, the sequences where they're just like the town halls, and you just have like a whole bunch of idiots, like just basically raising really stupid points and believing any sort of stupid bullshit that gets brought up. That's how this was for 2 hours, but without the comedy. And it's extremely frustrating.
So it just highlights how sad and concerning it is instead.
Yeah. When you don't have Leslie Knope and Ben Wyatt to liven things up and kind of look at the camera and tell you, hey, they're idiots, but don't worry, we'll figure a way out. It turns out to be a pretty grim mirror to look at when it comes to American politics and American communities, I think. So, yeah, of course, they don't think... They're too busy praying to notice that their own kids are...
To put on their damn masks and just pay attention to science.
Yeah.
When they return home, this is what happens, is they start freaking out. They're like, shit, these little shits are going to get us in trouble. So that's when they go and they start shaking the little girls, like, wake up, we know you did this. And that's when they wake up and just... I don't want to. I want to go be with my mom. And like this girl tries to jump out the window, and they all scream no. And this is basically where they do like where Winona starts, being calling an audible. She's a quarterback here. And before she hikes, she's just yelling at everybody. She's like, all right, this is what we're going to do. We're just going to keep this going until we can't anymore. And that's what they do. All the hubbub and excitement actually leads John Proctor to town. As the previous shot of him, he clearly lives on like the outskirts. He's He's like a Jesse Ventura type. He lives distance from everything. He'll pay his taxes. Just leave him alone.
He lives in Buda.
He'll stay off the reserve. Just don't tax his cigarettes type thing. Yeah. And he comes to town to see what's going on. Shows up looking like a heartthrob. He's got like his duster and cowboy hat on here. It's absolutely phenomenal. We quickly learn, though, that John Proctor is not, while being a religious man, does not believe in witchcraft and all this devilry and all this satanic culture that they're bringing into question. As he visits town, though, this is where we discover that he had a previous affair with Abigail, Miss Winona Ryder, as she, I don't want to say confronts him, but calls out to him before he leaves to go back home. And it's just basically a moment of exposition while she sweats and breathes heavily in his direction, and he does his best grizzled Clark Gable, just like looking down at her, and literally all he had to say was, "I don't give a damn." He says something cooler in like an old English way.
Yeah,
like,
that's what I was thinking.
I'd sooner cut my hand off before it reached for you.
Well, first he says, "You'll be in the stocks before you're 20 or something." That's his equivalent of flirting. He says that, and she melts. She has to lean against the wall to keep it together.
If it was a musical, this is the part where she'd go, and like as she leans back against the barn wall. But yeah, he tries to be coy and cool, like you do, like exactly how I would expect Daniel Day-Lewis to act if he came across a girl that at one time he had a torrid love affair with. But he really, at this point, holds no ill will. So he's just trying to be like, "Hey, you look good. I hope all's well with you." But then she will not relent. She thinks he's playing hard to get, when in reality he's just like being an adult. Like, "Hey, that was fun. Get the fuck away from me." And she keeps pressing the matter more and more and more, to the point where she does kiss him, and he has to like push her off. And he's steadfast in that, "I love my wife. What we did, but you need to just stay away. It is what it is."
Yeah, I don't know. I think that one of the through lines of the movie is that John Proctor is a good guy. He's our hero. He's an honorable guy, even though he's done some shitty things. Because it's not just that he had an affair with Winona Ryder. It's just basically he cheated on Joan Allen and
canceled.
Yeah, I mean, and this was like Puritan times. It was
yes.
It was a bigger deal than when Winona Ryder cheated on Kevin James with Channing Tatum. I mean, this is a terrible offense. It could land somebody in jail. It could get somebody hanged. So,
yeah, I don't know why I had to dip back to other movies. I mean, that one's right there. This movie is like based around the evils of cheating, where that movie's a fucking comedy, and it's like Winona Ryder cheated on this fat guy with this really hot guy with a tattoo on his butt.
But here, this is the beginning of basically the transformation of Winona Ryder from somebody we're like, "Oh, okay, well maybe this girl got caught up into something that these stupid adults are gonna blow out of proportion," into just eventually becoming the evilest of evil people in the movie. And it's also when you can start telling that this was written by a guy, because, like I said, for all his reprehensible behavior, Daniel Day-Lewis always comes out as he has the moral high ground. And, this is the guy that cheated on Joan Allen with a girl that, like you said, I mean, yeah, Winona might have been 25, but I'm pretty sure she's supposed to be playing younger.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a pretty good chance that he slept with a minor in this Amish village in Salem. So he's in the wrong, and I know he's trying to be cool and whatever, but he is the one that starts the conversation when she's there. He knows what he's getting into. He asks her if this is all her doing. He's seen like everybody freaking out about the devil and whatever, and he's like, this smells like you, Winona. And that's when she starts flirting. So he's the adult. He knows what he's doing. But then the moment that Winona bites, the moment that she's hooked again, he walks away, and he's like, "No, I'm a man of I'm an innocent. I'm a respectful husband now."
What would be the 1600s version of doxing? Like, what would the Twitter of the day have found on? I'm trying to think of how they would have gotten Daniel Day-Lewis fired from his job, and what the campaign they would have started would have been.
Crucibling.
Crucibling.
I mean, well, he outs himself later in the movie, so that's the way you do it in the 1800s. You just torture their wives until they confess to something.
That was like the equivalent of Kevin Spacey's video that he recorded and released on Christmas, was Daniel Day-Lewis admitting that he was an adulterer. Was it Christmas or Thanksgiving? whatever it was like one of the most baffling, stupidest things I've ever seen a celebrity do.
Yep.
Not Daniel Day-Lewis, of course. He's just, I mean, Joan Allen admits it. She was sick, wasn't able to attend to his needs.
Again, doesn't that sound like something a dude wrote?
Yeah. What's homeboy's name?
Arthur Miller.
Arthur Miller. I'm just like him and Daniel Day-Lewis, like toasting beers in between takes, eating Cheetos and playing like Sega Genesis or whatever at the time. And then Joan Allen, hey, sweetheart, can you get us another round of beers? He's apparently from Boston. So Daniel Day-Lewis does ride off into the sunset and expects this to kind of be the end of it. It's, hey, we had our fun. Let's go on our separate ways. But, as has been said time and time again, hell hath no fury like a woman's scorn. And boy, does that become evident in this movie. Reverend Hale, at this point, it's time to put his foot down. He just starts absolutely reaming the local women, and basically just saying, you broads know something, and you need to tell me now, or so help me God, yada, yada, yada. And this, at this point, God, it's awful. And Winona Ryder doesn't know what to do because they all kind of look to her because she's, like I said, she's the fucking Tom Brady. She's the quarterback of all this shit. They're like, whoa, what do we do? And then she's just like, the black woman did it, and sells out also the maid that she works with at Paris's home. Excuse me, Bruce Davison. I'm trying to find the character name. Tituba?
Tituba,
I believe. Tituba. She sells her out, and then, of course, they just believe her, so they go and start beating her, asking why, she brought the devil into their lives. And fortunately, this is probably the moment of, it's hard to say that there's any type of, like, redemption or, like...
No, but I know what you're talking
asterisk.
about. This is, because I kind of agree that this is where a minority, a black woman that's probably been treated like shit the entire time.
She outsmarts them.
Yeah, she sees the window. She sees her opportunity and seizes it. And basically,
yeah.
I mean, I don't know that she turns the tables on them because she still has a pretty rough go at it. But she figures out, she outsmarts them. She realizes that all she has to do for them to stop beating her is that, oh, well, yeah, you're right. I consort with the devil. And the devil told me that he wanted to kill Senator Kelly. And
the way she gets off is basically by exploiting how fucking stupid white people are.
Yes.
She says, I want to get rid of the devil, help me. And so Hale is going to, exorcise the demon, so to speak. And, but through all this, they like ask her what she sees with the devil and how the devil lied to her. And she does get this awesome, like, she cuts this promo on Bruce Davison about, like, how the devil came to her as him and promised her, like, sold her a bill of goods, which you can tell by his face, because, like, guaranteed her freedom and that she'd be with her loved ones and whatnot. And you can tell by his face that, oh, wait, that's shit I really said to her. And that's, I think one of the things throughout the movie is interesting is, like, Bruce Davison really doesn't believe any of it. And then at the end, he finally cracks. He's like, oh, this is all bullshit. But here, and then she kind of just keeps, like, saying what, it's basically like Family Guy. She writes this script that these people she knows is just going to fucking lap up because they don't have enough intelligence to, want more. And this causes, of course, Winona to freak out and fight or flight. She starts making up more shit and lying of like, oh, yes, and I saw this woman's dead daughter there. And, and then there was a pink giraffe that galloped through. And
yeah,
it's just completely out of control.
But see, with Tituba, it was self-preservation. Winona did not have to go there. That's once again, I just don't.
She's so fucking vain. She's just like, well, I can't have all the shine taken off of me.
Right. So she took what the black person was trying to do for survival, and then the white person came and took it and turned it into just a weapon of evil.
She culturally appropriated this woman trying to just get away. That's exactly it.
Her fake devil worshipping was culturally appropriated.
It was fucking like gentrification. She took like this woman doing what she had to do to live and survive, and then fucking turned it into a Jimmy John's and said, no, I'm going to fucking, have my own way with this and get my own attention, all the glory to me.
Made an app.
Yeah, exactly. And, I mean, again, you pointed it out. I wasn't thinking about it, I guess because I'm a man, but you're right. The narrative of this movie is women lie. That's all they do. Even the good ones, they're going to lie in the situation where, everything depends on it.
Yeah.
So Daniel Day-Lewis knows the truth. he tells his wife, he tells Joan Allen, like, I know this is all bullshit, but it leads to a fight with them. She's like, well, how do you know this? Well, she told me when we were together. Oh, you guys were alone. Women be shopping, just some standard stuff here that they go through. It's basically building the tension, but also just, you got to show your gun. And this is past the first act, but the gun being that Daniel Day-Lewis knows the truth. Yeah. Which, of course, comes to bite him in the ass.
Yeah, but this is also another excellent example of how he is in the wrong, but he walks off the scene as if he was in the right. He acts offended.
With his shoulder pads under his fucking shirt.
Yeah, he acts offended that Joan Allen would be concerned, jealous that he was alone with Winona Ryder talking to her. He's like, I don't know what else you want me to do. I apologize. I'll apologize so you won't get over it.
And he hits her with the Rip Thomas line from No Holds Barred. You've built bigger walls than I ever could. I mean, they're both equal scenes of acting ability and delivery. Just replace Hulk Hogan with Daniel Day-Lewis and you've got the same thing. I guess they're federal judges. I just know the big deal is here come the judge. The
Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court, they go Paul Scofield, who was nominated for Best Supporting Actor Golden Globes. So, But him and Joan Allen both got nominations for this movie. But he plays Judge Thomas Danforth, and he's got a few of his henchmen with him, but he's obviously the head honcho, the big buccaneer. And they're there to figure out what the hell's going on. They start by putting some locals on trial, some crazy people, and then we get like a really morbid montage of like the local women just lying about people, and we see all these different people getting sentenced. There's like a fire that accidentally starts, and Jeffrey Jones blames it on some old dude.
Yeah,
it's awful. Like, this is where the movie started to piss me off, because then like they put this little girl on trial that lies about this old man, and it's just one of those things of like, at this point in the movie, I started wondering like, what are Winona and her flock gaining?
What's
by
the end
lying
game
about this shit? Yeah, which there isn't any.
There isn't any, but I think that the problem is that I made the Parks and Rec comparison because that's, for a 30-minute sitcom, you can get away with that. Where the point is like, oh, isn't it funny that they're stupid? And, they're just, for 30 minutes, you don't have to delve into the psychology and motivation of the regular standard Pawnee citizen. But here, when the stakes are so high, I mean, nobody's getting hanged or whipped in Pawnee. But here in Salem, I mean, every time that there's a lie, like a lot of people are suffering, they're getting thrown in prison. And he said, I mean, that old dude, he just seemed so calm when the little girl was lying about him worshiping the devil. At some point, she's like, there's a black bird over his shoulder. And everybody's acting like, oh, yeah, there is one.
It's so heart-wrenching, too, because that old guy's like, I don't know what to do. I can't defend myself. And, God, it's absolutely awful. Through all these lies and manipulation, Winona Ryder does make sure to get her shot in and accuse Goody Proctor, Elizabeth Proctor is her proper name, of being a witch. So one of the local townspeople explains this to John Proctor, and so he knows at this point that he has to take action.
Finally.
Yeah, he finds Winona Ryder, and she's gone full, like, batshit crazy. This is when they're in the woods together. It's like she starts presenting herself to him like she believes all these lies that she's telling, but, like, with this fucking conniving smile on her face of, like, if you don't do exactly what I say, I'm going to fuck your entire life up.
She doesn't know if he's wearing a wire. So she's being very cautious with what she says.
That's right. But she's letting her eyes and her mouth, or like her facial expressions speak for her, of really getting her point across. But then he just cuts a classic Daniel Day-Lewis promo of like, if you do this, I will burn your house down and kill everyone you love. He's like, he threatens hell. He said he'll bring hell to Frogtown if he needs to.
Like, I'm finished. And then he walks away.
Yes. So this is where it became too weird for me in terms of like just watching. And, you've mentioned the Parks and Rec analogies, which I think are way more fun and innocent than so much of this I'm watching. And I'm just seeing this with people in the news and people in everyday life now with this entire pandemic that's going on, just the idiocy of people and like the stupid shit they'll believe. And this is like where it got too weird because Reverend Hale shows up at the Proctor's residence because he's heard, the accusations put against them. He wants to get to know them to see, exactly what he could be dealing with here. And he uses the word strange, like the expression strange time. He's like, I understand this is a strange time. And I'm just like, oh God, what the fuck?
This is an unprecedented time.
Yes. And then Daniel Day-Lewis explains, hey, I didn't realize the world had gone mad with all this nonsense is the quote he has. And it's like fucking the current marketing campaign of every like restaurant and any like service industry good right now against the rational consumer of just like, look, I have nothing to hide, but don't piss on my boots and tell me it's raining type thing. And they just kind of go in his house. This is like a fucking, I never played Skyrim, but this is definitely like an MMO or role-playing type game of just, this is where you just go into someone's house to regenerate your health and get your mana up. And as Reverend Hale leaves, this was Joan Allen's Oscar clip about, I know I'm a good person. And if your God's telling you that because you believe this, then I don't believe or I don't agree with your God. This wasn't actually, in fact, her Oscar clip, but to me, this was her Oscar clip of just basically, I know who I am and I have my beliefs, but I'm also not a fucking idiot and don't subscribe to all this religious bullshit you do. And if you do, that's your problem, not mine.
It's almost like Arthur Miller forgot that he was supposed to be demonizing women for just that one scene.
And yeah, and you can tell this Reverend Hale character with his fucking perm or his press permed hair is just like, he's seriously got the Cat Williams haircut, which I guess that wouldn't be necessarily a perm, but it's straightened. And
nobody else has that hair in this movie or in any of the movies we've done so far in the Summer of Winona.
And everyone else is like, it's the fucking 1600s. Everyone else's hair is disheveled, but this dude, I just could have done a one shot of him with like a spritz bottle, like. But
well, he's kind of a celebrity. I really, Contrarians Corner and Real Talk. He's my favorite character in the movie because he at least has something going on. He's flawed, and the movie is not trying to make him look like he's the hero, but he goes on a journey. Right, like you said,
he has the definitive story arc.
Yeah. He comes in, like you said, and he's just like, I know, I have all the answers. I'm the superstar here. I'm the exorcist. I'm gonna take care of this. And then through the movie, his own faith in what's happening starts to crumble. His eyes start opening. Of course, he ends up doing nothing, but it's better than Daniel Day-Lewis, who's like, well, I'm right and righteous the entire time.
With not Proctor, but Hale, like. What he does in the end when things get too rough for him, he's just like, fuck this, I'm done, I'm leaving.
he's the just to bring it back to modern times, he's the Dr. Fauci in this thing where he keeps trying to tell the people of Salem to keep calm, listen to the facts, let's not be too rash.
Listen to reason.
Let's not reopen Salem yet. And but then, of course, Paul Scofield keeps just contradicting him.
Fuck this. This court is corrupt, and I can't stand by anymore and watch this. So, yeah, Joan Allen calls him out on it. Daniel Day-Lewis, again, just kind of motherfucks him. And it's like, you guys, do you understand how stupid what you're saying sounds? But they reassure, no, we're going to be able to open back up on Easter. Everything's going to be fine. The economy is going to be back. Abigail, again, scorned lover, stabs herself with a needle and blames it on Elizabeth Proctor's spirit. And they come back to the Proctor residence and find a doll, like what they believe to be a voodoo doll. When in fact, one of Winona's henchwomen is Mary, who's the housemaid for the Proctors, actually just made this doll for them and admits to it. It's like, no, I just made that for him. It's not a fucking voodoo doll. And they're like, are you sure? Do you swear on your life that Joan Allen didn't use this voodoo doll to try to kill Abigail?
Is that I'm trying to remember if that's all it takes for Joan Allen to finally be arrested, that they found the doll.
Mm-hmm.
That's it, right?
And then Yeah, and then she pulls the Aaron Eckhart, and she's like, "I am the Batman," and then they take her into custody, and she just kind of lets them go, take her away. That is.
This is where she's really dumb because there's Arthur Miller back to his old tricks of just like, fuck it, she's a woman, so she fucked up. I think that the moment that they realize how far Winona would go, and she knows she's a target, Joan Allen has figured it out. They established that she's figured it out. She, at some point before she gets arrested, she tells Daniel Day-Lewis something like, the news is closed or something, and Daniel Day-Lewis is like, don't worry, they won't take you. Why did she and Daniel Day-Lewis, why didn't they just use Winona's weapons against her? That was, the moment that things get this dire, why wouldn't Joan Allen just kind of like fall to her knees and go like, oh my God, I was dreaming and I saw the devil and Winona Ryder come at me on a black horse and they had a sword and a needle and a doll. And because it's been proven now, an hour into the movie, that these guys will believe anything. So why... It never even crosses their mind. It's not even that they have a conversation. They're like, no, we're too good for this. We're not going to lie. It never even occurs to them that they could outsmart this 17, 18-year-old by playing her own game.
Yeah, they're the smartest people in the province.
In Salem.
But too smart for their own good. They don't even think of just like, yeah, exactly what you said. They should just be like, we should just tell them the fire was talking to us.
Yes, exactly. She should have said, oh, this doll, this is my god doll. It protects me. And it just told me, oh, right now it's telling me that Winona Ryder's full of shit.
So Elizabeth Proctor is arrested, taken in with a whole herd of others that have been accused of being witches. I mean, they're running out of people here. And at this point, Daniel Day-Lewis and Hale are like, it's all a hoax. It's all a hoax created by the hierarchy here that's trying to imprison us. So the trial begins, and this is like the rest of this movie, with the exception of like the last 10 minutes, take place in the local church / courthouse, and just is like ridiculousness building on itself, because it's exactly like John Proctor finds himself in this court of people that have figured out we can just keep making shit up to drag out this process, and people just listen to whatever we say. It's like the invention of lying.
We'll just keep appealing.
Yeah, exactly. And so he like shows up and he's like, I'm going to smite the court and I'm going to get out of here with my wife and we're going to be good to go. And he has Mary, the housemaid, to just be like, yeah, fucking Abigail lied about everything. And then he brings a petition and he's like, and these are the people here that think everything's wrong. And then the judges immediately like, arrest all these people.
He shows up with his link to change.org. He's like, look at all these people that have signed my petition. And all he does is get the website blocked.
Yes. And he sees all the media credentials and just pulls them all and says, nope, no more of these people asking questions. And Daniel Day-Lewis is just kind of standing there like, this isn't a democracy. And I look at him and I go, I understand your pain, brother. And it just all backfires. He just went in there so like, I guess it's kind of deserving for how much of like a pompous ass his character is, for him to think everything's going to work, and then everyone's just like, nope.
Yeah, it takes them so long, you're right, to figure out that the game is rigged and that there's no way that they're going to win, and they don't, by playing by any sort of rules. Because his buddy, his neighbor, the old guy, right? It turns out that he was some sort of lawyer.
Corey,
yeah. And
Peter Vaughn. He
shows up also he tries to be a lawyer in this court that has no law, and makes the crucial mistake. This is where he says, I have an anonymous source told me that Jeffrey Jones is just making this shit up so he can take over the land of his neighbors. And they ask him,
who's the anonymous source?
Yeah, he's like, oh, well, I can't tell you that. Arrest him.
And they eventually kill him because he won't tell him who it is.
It's just,
and then the judge is like, when he gives him the letter about like his the charges he wants to bring against Jeffrey Jones, is like, oh, this is really officially worded. He's like, there's a lot of big words in here. Obsequious? What does that mean? It just keeps falling apart in front of their eyes. It's ridiculous.
In a normal movie, around this time, if not actually much sooner, is when the character that knows what's up, the guy that's going to save us all, shows up.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it happened at this point in the movie, I would have been at least like, all right, better late than never. But it never happens. Nobody ever shows up to save the day. Somebody from another town, another judge. another priest that's a little more open-minded. Do show up and just kind of rallies the troops and overthrows, gets everybody to vote in November. But that doesn't happen.
It's a Godzilla movie where Godzilla never showed up. It was just, come on, someone save the day. There's this shot of Mary like crying in some abandoned house in the village, and all the women come in and just kind of stare at her, and then she just cries and runs through them and gets away, and there wasn't really any point to it. She finally is okay with coming forward with her testimony of all of them lying. This is when they're at the courthouse. At this point, Hale, again being the only really smart one, is like, there should definitely be lawyers present for this. We need people who understand the law to be here. And Pence, what's the judge's name? Paul Scofield. Yeah. Judge Danforth is like, nope, we don't need any lawyers. And he tries to use his silver tongue to convince him. And Daniel Day-Lewis, again, to the point of him being so full of himself, he's like, I got this. And so the judge questions the woman. If she's lying, she maintains she is. And then one of the fucking Ivanka Trump, one of the judges there, is like, well, if, you fainted when you claim to see things, faint now. And then this woman can't even pretend to faint.
What the hell?
She just,
yeah.
It's not hard. Ric Flair fainted onto his face he did the same bump every night for fucking 40 years. It's not that hard to do. And she just is like, it's like she's trying to start flying the way this actress shoots this. She like plants her feet in the ground and, she's straining really hard. And God,
there's no reason.
I mean, if nothing else, hold your breath really hard and put your head between your legs. And then try to stand back up. You will faint.
Or you can just tell them, the devil won't let me faint. That's all you have to do. All you have to
God, I didn't even think about that. You're right.
Yeah. All it takes, you just say the devil and they're going to buy whatever else comes out of your mouth. So
what should have happened is she should have just stopped talking, and like Daniel Day-Lewis could explain the devil's taken her ability to talk. And how are they going to recover from that? I mean, at this point, if this is like Johnny Cochran, if the glove does not fit, you must acquit. The idea, well, she can't faint, so that's it. Trial adjourned.
That's all it takes.
So they go to take her off, and this is where we get Daniel Day, and in all his glory, just yelling, "Whore!" and explains, he fesses up to the entire thing. And then one of the quotes I did write down is, he calls Winona Ryder a lump of vanity and explains that this is what it is. It's just a scorned lover in the end, just causing all this killing dozens of innocent people just to get back at a guy that turned her down. And
the judges, this gets their attention.
Yeah. This is where she's finally like, I don't know. I don't know what to do. And I do have DDL Oscar clip here in parentheses.
Oh, dude, he has like 5 of them in the last 30 minutes of this movie.
Oh, well, he's Daniel Day-Lewis. But this is, I think it's basically because he uses the phrase "whore's vengeance" in this. And he's like pounding the table and crying and explaining to the judge, he's not proud of it, but he's an adulterer. He had an affair with this woman. And so that brings him to, he's like, will your wife attest to this? He's like, yeah. He's like, she ever lied? No, she's a good, honest woman. Well, go get her and we'll ask her. He brings her like to the courthouse. There's not even a purpose for this shot otherwise just to show like the horrible conditions and like what just complete dismay her life's in. They just show her being brought to the court in the back of like a buggy that has no roof on it, and it's just pouring rain on her. And she's just, Joan Allen's just kind of standing there bouncing around with the rickshaw. And so she gets there. The judge just has like this insane level of control at this point. This is why there should have been lawyers, because he's like, you look at this wall, you look at this wall, you stand on one leg, you keep your finger on your nose. And then he brings in Goody, and he's just like, hey, don't look at either of them. You tell me right now. He fuck her? And at this point, again, 1652, I guess the worst possible thing you can lose is your reputation as a faithful spouse. So she dances around it, but then says they were never, intimate. I kicked her out before it got to that point. And then Daniel Day-Lewis, like the couple that just lost at Pictionary, he like turns around, he's like, it's dignity. Can't you tell? And he tells her, he's like, no, Goody, I already admitted to it. And then like they get that like Hitchcock zoom on her face, and she's like, oh dear God. And then she gets taken off.
Even Winona, they have a close up of Winona too, and she cannot believe that these people are so fucking stupid. They had her. I mean, Paul Scofield told her. This is like a pretty awesome duel of titans of acting, I think, when you get Scofield and Ryder face to face for that one moment where he tries to give her a way out before John Allen arrives, and he goes like, "Child, if you're lying, then may the Lord have mercy on you." And Winona holds his stare, but she knew that all she had to do, all John Allen had to do, was tell the truth, and that was it. End of movie. Everybody lives happily ever after, except for the people that have already been killed in this witch hunt. But no, the one time that, you know, she really could have benefited from telling the truth, she just decides to spare that piece of shit, Daniel Day-Lewis. And again, you know, it's like when Daniel Day-Lewis fucks up this way, the music swells and he gets shot from, like, you know, a lower angle. He looks like a hero. When Joan Allen messes up, it's just everybody looks at her like, God damn it. Another 45 minutes.
Even Winona Ryder's like kind of disappointed. She's like, she's completely lost her faith in humanity at this point. It's just, she's like, I can't believe people can be so dumb. So then all of this causes Mary to completely just crack, and she's like, fuck it, can't beat them, join them. They're going to get all the power anyway. So she says, John made me do it. He's got the devil. And the whole town confronts him like, is this true? Or were you sent by the devil? And he's like, no. But if you're asking about my opinion of God, God is dead. And he's like wearing his fucking, you know, clam digging boots. He's in the middle of the water, just wearing his waders. And again, at this point, all of Daniel Day-Lewis's dialogue from this point forward is either yelled or said through like gritted teeth and tears flowing.
It's just 30 minutes of Oscar clips.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we get another montage. My Baby Takes the Morning Train starts playing as we see all these people being hung one by one after being found guilty of witchcraft.
Oh, and almost so casually, he doesn't even get his own shot. That this is when Hale quits. He's had enough. Daniel Day-Lewis has taken the spotlight. He's screaming that he doesn't believe in God, and just kind of like in the background, Hale goes like, I quit.
Yeah, it's during all the chaos, and you can tell it was clearly put in post. They had him come back to record this line where he's like, I can't take this court anymore. I quit.
You never see his face because he just got his stunt double to walk off.
So the morning before John is set to be hanged, Abigail goes and visits him in his holding cell. And I mean, this is the logical conclusion for the Abigail character, like a fucking thief in the night. She's like Kyle Reese, or, you know, any one of those movies where you fall for someone you shouldn't have and they're gone by the morning. It's Eva, the end of Metal Gear Solid 3. Snake wakes up. It's like, what? Where the fuck? I trusted this person. And Abigail just completely robs Bruce Davidson and robs him blind, goes and sees John and is like, hey, I got all this money. We can go. There's a boat waiting. And he's like, she like clearly is freaked out with how much has happened by her just trying to win him back here. This is her best moment of acting, because she's like, I never meant for any of this to happen. I just kind of wanted us to be together. And he says something to the effect of like,
women.
If we, yeah. He says, if we ever see each other again, it will not be on a boat, but in hell. And then she just kind of leaves and flees for good. Yeah, that's the last we see of Winona Ryder.
Much like in The Dilemma. That's it. She's not there for the movie's climax.
The difference being with The Dilemma is like she's being smart in this situation of just like, I used up and completely fucked up this entire society, so I'm going to steal this money and get the hell out of here.
Let's see what else I can do in the world.
Yeah, exactly. So what is John going to do? Because he is posed with the situation as Bruce Davidson's freaking out. He's like, she took all my money. I don't know what to do. And the judge, Paul Scofield, does have this awesome part where it seems like for a second he forgot his line and then remembers it, because he just looks at Bruce Davidson like, you are a stupid man, or something. There's some, it might say foolish, but whatever the case is, there's a long drag in there where he's trying to remember, and he was looking off camera, and Daniel Day-Lewis was motioning, drag it out. So to the point, John is faced with, as Davidson is scrounging to try to figure out what's going on, they don't have their star witness anymore. So he's like, well, we can get out of this. We can give John the ability to sign the declaration that said he was possessed by the devil, but now he wants to give his life to God, and we all win. It'll be a big PR stunt. Here we go. So they explain this to Joan Allen. They explain this to Daniel Day-Lewis. And they go to discuss, what they're going to do and what the next step is. Essentially, that being, if he just signs this piece of paper, him and Joan Allen can go home and live together.
Right. All he has to do is lie like she did. Only this time, the lie would be for their happiness. All he has to say is that Winona was not lying, that he was consorting with the devil.
So this is the actual
Oscar clip?
Oscar scene. Yeah, this was Joan Allen's Oscar clip at the 1997 Academy Awards.
I can see it.
As Christopher Plummer presented it, having won Best Supporting Actor the year prior. And they just have it back and forth. He's like, if I do this, will you still love me? She's like, sure. He's like, what if I don't? It's like, well, you'll be dead, so that'll suck.
Oh, and this is where she apologizes. This is what the movie's been building up to. She apologizes for making him cheat. That's the climatic moment of that conversation when she says, "I'm sorry, I was not a good wife. I was cold, and I drove you away." And then he says, "I forgive you," and hugs her.
And then they kiss, and then he says, "I want my life." And so they have this proclamation or this contract or whatever the hell. They have a quill, so it's a legally binding document. They're like, all right, so sign this. So he signs it. And the other people being taken away to be hung are like, you fucking sellout, and they can just basically boo him. To them, it's like the night that Dylan played Electric for the first time. They're just screaming Judas at him. So he signs it, and they're like, excellent, we're going to go hang this on the door of the church. And it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. It's like in Airheads where they sign the deal, and then it's not at all what they thought it was going to be. So he's like, no, can't we just know that I signed it? And like, can I keep it? And can we throw it away?
Can we never speak of this again?
Yeah. It's because he knows he lied, and they start catching on to it. They're like, so is that not true? It's like, no, it is. I want to live. They're like, well, we're going to go hang it on the church. And he's like, no, I don't want you to. They ask why, and then he lets out, just bellows, because it's my name. And then it's quiet, and everyone's kind of, okay. So is it a confession or not? And then he tears it up in front of him. And at this point, Hale and even Bruce Davidson are like, what the fuck are you doing? And they try to get his wife to talk some sense into him.
Yeah.
And then we get another, like, it's like an Avengers shot because it's like this sweeping under close-up. And she's like, there goes my hero. And then she salutes him.
As he hops on the carriage, just taking the other people are gonna get killed. The other two older ladies. And
My Hero by the Foo Fighters starts to play.
Yeah, again, another triumphant moment after Daniel Day-Lewis basically does the wrong thing. He's like the equivalent, I guess, of a Bernie bro, where he's stuck to his principles, but in the end, those two ladies were gonna die anyway, and now his children are.
When they were arresting him, he just kept screaming, "I do not consent."
It was like, that's good. He hung, believing that he had done the proper thing, but now Joan Allen has to raise those 3 kids actually, because she's revealed to be pregnant.
He could have been like Matthew Lillard at the end of SLC Punk if he just saw the bigger picture and the hierarchy of everything and got a good job and lived his life. But he ends up like Matthew Lillard at the end of Scream, where he thinks he's too smart and too good for everybody else, and now he's going to die because he gets taken to the gallows and put up on the scaffold. And it's him and 2 other women who, both, to their credit, they never wavered. They maintained their innocence the entire time. They have more of a spine than Daniel Day-Lewis does in this case.
I'm sure Arthur Miller would tell you that's only because they were too dumb.
And then, like, when they start singing Santa Claus is Coming to Town at the end of Elf, the community comes together. They start saying the Lord's Prayer as they're one by one hung. He doesn't even get to say amen because Daniel Day-Lewis gets to the forever and ever and then whoop, gets pushed off. And then fade to black.
Yeah, he could have, he could have just left Salem. I know back in the day you couldn't just hop on a plane and go across the world, but it also, I kind of get the feeling that it didn't take too long to just ride off and leave the shitty town where his name has been sullied and just start anew. There's no internet. Nobody's going to know about that whole shit that happened back in Salem. He can just be like, I'm Daniel Day-Lewis. I'm still a hunk. Got my wife and 3 kids. I'm handy with a scythe. He could have just started.
Look at what Ted Bundy was able to get away with, man, for decades.
Yeah.
Like, this guy just cheated on his wife once and she still wants to stay with him. Moved to Shelbyville.
All his friends were already dead. There was no reason for him to stay.
And, like, they were, like, a good football field away from those guards, too, when they're talking. Those fuckers don't have guns. And they were, like, by a body of water. If you just told Joan Allen, it's like, all right, we're going to make a go for it. They conceivably could have outrun them. And then if they weren't, which of those old fuckers is going to be able to take Daniel Day-Lewis in a fight?
And all he has to do is like, the devil told me that you need to let me go.
Help, the devil's got a hold of me. But no, he stuck to his morals. He tried to be a decent man in an indecent time, and he paid dearly for it.
Yeah.
So the moral of the story is, don't get involved with women.
Yes. Don't get involved with women, and if you do, and they do you wrong, then you show him what's what by sticking to your principles and letting everybody else die.
And if you're a woman, the moral of the story is you can get away with anything.
Unless you're Joan Allen.
I guess that's true. You can get away with anything as long as you're young and attractive. That's the moral of the story.
Yeah, if you're just like, if you're a matriarch, then you're screwed. You're already it's only 20 and under.
Done your time. All right. There's so much more to that movie than I remembered. We'd get somewhere and then be like, oh, wait, we got to go back because we missed this little skadoodle here. Are you ready to move this along to Real Talk?
Let's go to Real Talk.
I come to tell you to think on what to do to save yourself. You say you were blind to spirits. You cannot see them anymore. And you will never cry witchery again.
I know you must speak so, John. I understand. But my spirit's changed entirely. I suffer now.
It's the truth, John. Look! The bite your wife gave me is not yet healed.
My wife?
Saturday, she come into my bed in the middle of the night and bite at my breast.
My wife has not left the house this month.
Why must she leave the house to send her spirit on me? Don't George Jacobs come jabbing at me with his walking sticks. Feel the lumps he gave me only last night.
George Jacobs is locked up in the jail.
And thank God he is. They're gonna hang him, you know. And he prays, you know. He prays in jail.
May he not pray.
They torture me at night while he's praying in the jail. A hypocrite. And they all are. And thank God I have the power to cleanse the town of them.
Hear me. If you cry words against my wife, it will be the end of you. I will not have her condemned.
I am but God's finger, John. If he would condemn Elizabeth, she would be condemned.
You know me. If she is condemned, it will be the end of you.
All right, I am recording for Real Talk.
Excellent. Hello, and welcome to Real Talk for The Crucible from 1996. You're going to have to get creative with editing Contrarians Corner, Julio. It's like one of our longest Contrarians Corners we've ever done.
I think that it's doable.
No,
I mean,
there's a lot.
There was
to
a lot
talk
of
about.
pauses. Yeah, it can be done. They will never notice.
So The Crucible, starring Daniel Day-Lewis and the woman of the summer, Miss Winona Ryder. The temperatures in Texas, I think it was at least 103 every day last week. Nothing hotter than the torrid love affair between Winona Ryder and Daniel Day-Lewis. Directed by...
Out of all the romances we've had in the summer of Winona, is this the hottest, the most tragic?
The hottest thing we've still seen in the summer of Winona is the Channing Tatum Winona Ryder kiss. Just that porn kiss that they have. There's no way you kiss someone like that without the intention of fucking. And then like here Here we do get the part though where like Winona in like the height of her insanity and like where she's just full of her own shit. She's like, and old man Jacobs beat me with his canes in my sleep last night. Here, feel, and then takes Daniel Day-Lewis's hands and puts it on her fucking clam, and he's like, unhand me, woman. But no, not the hottest, because like I said, just from a visual, first glance perspective, she's obviously made to look much younger than him, so it's a bit off-putting. But this movie is directed by Sir Nicholas Hytner?
I think it's Hytner.
Hytner, a man of specifically theater directorial fame. Had many, many plays and theater productions that he directed, operas as well. His filmography is quite short. In addition to The Crucible, consisted of The Madness of King George, The Object of My Affection, Center Stage, The History Boys, The Lady in the Van, and Talking Heads. Directed by Mr. Hytner, written by Arthur Miller, the screenplay based on The Crucible, the play by Arthur Miller, so he was double dipping here. Released on November 27th of 1996. Budget, got ahead of myself there, of about $25 million, and this bizom didn't even make $8 million back, which is surprising considering. But again, I was about to say, well, if you released that today, it wouldn't be the case. But even still, Daniel Day-Lewis is like a respected actor, but he's in many ways, he is not The Rock. Like, I wouldn't trust to put his name on a movie and it immediately guarantees it's going to make $100 million. But still, man. So 96, this might just been a little too soon, because we were about to enter I wouldn't say the golden age necessarily, but we were about to enter that big boom of romantic tragedies. We had Romeo and Juliet, the Baz Luhrmann, you had Titanic coming up, you had Shakespeare in Love. There was a series that was yet to come, so I think this movie might have just missed they were a little too early to the party. Not to say that under different circumstances it could have done any better, but
also it's just so, I mean, the difference between this and all those others is that the romance
those other movies are good.
I mean,
this is much better than Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet.
It's better than Titanic.
Fuck off. I almost spit my whiskey out. I knew you were going to go there too, and I can always trust you to shit on Titanic, and I can always trust myself to not be able to not get mad at it. It just. I was thinking about that movie earlier today too, when we were doing this, because I was looking at movies around the same time, because I got on the thought of what I was just talking about, and such a good movie. Anyway, so I think tonally, they definitely, if this came out a year or two or even 3 later, when in the wake of those movies, they definitely could have marketed this differently to try to capitalize on that. But obviously, at the end of this wouldn't appeal to the same audience that those would, in the sense of like the teens and that type of thing of crying at the end because love is estranged.
Right. You're not rooting for a love story here. I mean, the closest you get is Daniel Day-Lewis and Joan Allen, but that's not really about, will he get the girl, will she get the boy, will they live happily ever after? This is more of, will they survive? Will they survive persecution? No, I think this is too much of a downer for that audience, the audience that's going to all those other movies. I don't know. Maybe it was too politically charged for mainstream audiences. And
I was getting like worked up watching it, because it's the type of thing like we joked about in the first portion of the podcast of like, it's so stupid. It's so dumb. Like that, not the movie per se, but just like the characters in the movie are so fucking stupid and all these things they're believing. And then to think that was like a real thing, and that there was like a meme I saw not too long ago that it was like a woman in the 1600s, and it was doing that thing with your thumb where you make it looks like your thumbs, you pull it off.
Uh-huh.
And then the panel down was like townspeople chasing her with pitchforks and torches, like, because that's essentially what this story tells. And I was getting worked up at these characters of like, you idiots, can't you see this in front of you? And then also the things we're talking about, really, It is reflective of what's going on right now and just how fucking dumb people are and the shit that people believe and the idea that just because someone you perceive to have a higher authority than you tells you something is fact, that you believe it as such. And again, we're not talking about these people's bosses. Like, that's a thing of like, it's just some person they perceive to have power. It was, and I do think that too, because whether they were trying to or not make this politically charged for the time of, you'll do what we tell you to do, and if you don't, ride you out of town on a rail. The story of it's very fascinating, and it is very frustrating.
Yeah, I think that as a commentary or an attack on McCarthyism, I mean, that's to me what makes it really interesting, but it also might be what pushed a lot of people away. I mean, I'm with you. Watching it, I was frustrated and angry and really uncomfortable. Kind of the way that I was uncomfortable with Edward Scissorhands last time, except that this is more, this is not a fairy tale, this is more real. But it was also, it gives you a lot to think about because, and I specifically stayed away from this in Contrarians Corner because it's too complex to kind of address in the middle of trying to be funny. But just the idea of, it's not really mob mentality, and it's not, the thing is, if you're aware of McCarthy, of the communist witch hunt and all that stuff, it's a very easy parallel to draw. And it's very easy to be like, and they were in the wrong, right? You had McCarthy bring in somebody and be like, hey, they said you're a communist. I'll let you off, but you have to give me the names of 10 communists. And then that person would be like, oh, well, okay, here's 10. And then they bring those 10 and they make that offer to those 10 and they get another, 100 and so on. And obviously it's simplified in the movie to a ridiculous degree, and yet it's still believable that when you put religion as when religion is your only compass to achieve justice, then of course you fall in the trap of going like, I think Paul Scofield actually has a bit of dialogue where he goes like, listen, normal justice requires witnesses to determine the truth. But when you're talking about witches, well, it's only between the witch and the person that's being bewitched. You can't bring the witch to the stand, so you just kind of have to go by the testimony of one person. It's stupid, but I also believe that if you stop
doing tests, then we won't have any positive results.
Yeah, exactly. But so it's like you watch The Crucible and there's very clear like, well, this is wrong. Everybody's wrong. The system is wrong, etc. You learn about the communist witch hunt and you're like, yeah, that was just, McCarthy had his own agenda and he exploited the system, and they created an atmosphere much like in The Crucible where innocent people were willing to confess to things they hadn't done, or were willing to like throw other people that were also innocent under the bus just so that they would get the heat off of themselves. So far so good. But then the joke that I stayed away from was that Winona Ryder was also like doing the Me Too movement disservice because, I could see somebody like fucking Miramax guy, Harvey Weinstein, going like, well, listen, I was being prosecuted basically on the word of all these women. I had Winona Ryder saying, that I did it and everybody else did. I think the difference is that for all of our failures, we are at a point where we don't just go by, we don't say, hey, God told us, or the incentive of like, hey, give me some extra names so you can get off easy was not there in the way that, it was there during the McCarthy era or in the story of The Crucible. I think that the way that the system is set up now, there's a lot, it's not as simple as Winona Ryder saying, hey, Harvey Weinstein did this, and then suddenly everybody believed it. It's more like, well, there was like a valve that was like, the pressure was there, and it finally exploded. But it still, makes you take a step back, because I understand the argument of the people that are like, well, what prevents a Winona Ryder of doing something like this to me? Even though I side with any woman that's accusing somebody that's, saying, hey, this happened to me. I don't know. I was watching this movie and I was like, it's making a very solid argument against the communist witch hunt. And at the same time, if you wanted to look at it on the surface, it's also making an argument against it's not even cancel culture, but it's just something stronger that's happening here. The fact that
There's
you can
just a shocking amount of modern parallels.
Yeah.
Like that there's no way in 1996 they could have predicted if someone watches this 24 years from now, they'd be able to find so much relevance in it.
Right. But it's crazy that I think, it's not even that things are cyclical, but also that maybe we just don't change that much, and that
it's the power of words. Like, that's what it's trying to say, of like, I understand what you're saying too, and it's kind of hard to articulate, but the idea of, especially in times like this, but that's still prevalent to this day, even in times where there's no concrete evidence or anything like that, the power of words is very intense. And
I think that's it, actually, that, I was having trouble like getting there, but
well, it's also, we both talking about this, you don't want to say something that makes you seem insensitive, so
well, yeah, that's the thing. But I'm having trouble like expressing like what I feel is the difference. And the difference is that, again, for all our flaws, when you talk about somebody like Harvey Weinstein, like, there was a due process there. Yeah, it wasn't Paul Scofield taking it on his own hands, him and like a bunch of cronies, and just basically making arbitrary decisions. I think that, some people might have said that it took too long, but the point is that an accumulation of testimonies and an investigation and, defense lawyer and a DA, there was a process, that obviously
Bob Campbell wanted a lawyer there. He's like, we need attorneys here.
Yeah. And there were no decisions, as far as I can tell, like being made on the, just on the basis of religion, the ethereal quality of justice when it comes to witchcraft that Paul Scofield talks about in the movie. That was not an issue then. And it's like a lot of things remain the same, but tiny little things change, and that sometimes makes all the difference.
What the parallel to this is, like, yeah, with Harvey Weinstein and fucking sacks of shit like that have actually been put in prison, and there's plenty more that should be. But the idea, kind of piggybacking on what you're saying today, is like Scofield and his crew. That's like society and Twitter and like people now that just basically take it upon themselves to just jump to their own conclusions based on what's ever presented to them, and then try to ruin someone's life because of it. It's paralleled in this movie. I saw that in like the idea of like Winona Ryder just able to just make this shit up, and then they'll just be like, well, this person said this and it's plausible because of this, so we're gonna go hang you now because of it. And it's the mob mentality, like you said, of it, in that, much like in this movie, there's a reason these processes and these things exist, but then when you take them to these extremes, it hurts the sanctity and it compromises the integrity of the operation to begin with in a lot of ways.
Yeah. At the same time, I understand the frustration with, this is not in the movie, but the frustration with the process to begin with. So I can see how, if you feel like the process has failed you or has failed people that then you feel like, okay, well, then I need to do something else because it's going to fail again. I could see how somebody would argue that, well, the movie's showing you a lot of people agreeing on something and it's still not true, but that's because, the movie sets up a scenario where a lot of people are willing to lie to save their ass. But that's
it's also 400 years ago when people didn't really know better.
Yeah, but you put it on again on the McCarthy era where a bunch of people were like lying also. Yeah. But again, they had it
on the Trump era.
Well, yeah, it's like you have to have that incentive to lie. How exactly are you benefiting from this lie? And obviously, here. Forget Winona, you're talking about like the people that lie just because they don't want to, is either you confess or you hang, so you confess. And confessing, it means implicating other people.
That's where the whole idea of like, we made light about it, but it is true also of like, again, I don't want to say something that seems insensitive, so I don't want to say something like playing the victim, because that's definitely a phrase that should probably be retired. But the narcissism, I think, would be the better word to describe Winona in this. Like the whole scene where like the maid that makes everything up, and then Winona's like, well, fuck, this is going to take the attention off of me, so I have to, come up with something of my own. The vanity of man. And like in a lot of ways, I think a lot of people would say we're overanalyzing this because the story at the end of the day is just a scorn. To me, what I interpret it as is the scorned lover that just got pissed off and didn't care whose life she ruined just to make sure she ruined the dude who broke her heart's life. But through that, and obviously for all these things we're discussing, there's a lot to take away from it. And in a lot of cases, people in these situations, their vanity shines through incredibly so. And we see a lot of that today with, I will use the phrase play the victim for, obviously we keep referencing Trump and things like that, but people in that position that are clearly in the wrong but want to spin it for their own vanity needs to say, hey, this was, and I don't even know in this movie, would you say Winona Ryder's ever initially in the wrong until she just like her ego runs away with her? To me, the whole beginning of the movie was just like these girls just playing dumb and not really understanding what they're doing.
I think that that's the case, but it also, I think that's probably the weakest part of the movie for me. I kind of alluded to it in Contrarians Corner, that they just kind of do this because, that the fact that it's just so random. I mean, the consequences are massive, and I understand how once the ball gets rolling, it's just impossible to stop it. But yeah, if you go just from what the movie's showing you, it's not even that initially she's doing it with Daniel Day-Lewis and his wife in mind. She's just doing it because she got caught dancing in the middle of the night with her friends and doesn't want to get in trouble. But
it's just this lie that keeps evolving over time. It just keeps getting more and more insane. And to not completely pick on Trump, I did want to say Harvey Weinstein would be another person where vanity, where the case got away from him, like on his sentencing date, I think it was, where he showed up with his walker and like acted like he tripped and fell on the stairs getting there. That whole, I mean, that's these fuckers that are in the wrong but they still need to play to their ego.
He just went like, it's my name.
That's not too close off for Cosby when he just like when he got sentenced, he was like, fuck, or something like that. That's
what I find fascinating, though, that I'm 100% sure that we're in the right, and I have zero problems, like, speaking of Weinstein and Cosby and, so many others as guilty.
Oh, yeah.
But I guess while I was watching the movie, I did have that moment of introspection where I was like, okay, well, why is it that I don't question my certainty? It's like, I wasn't there, for any of this. Where am I getting all my facts from? And yes, at the end of the day, I think that as a society and as just a person, we're like in a much advanced playground than the people from Salem, and hopefully even the people from the 50s during McCarthyism. But
that's the idea. We should be more evolved.
Yeah, you would hope. And I would like to think that, I would never like accept that at face value, and I would always like do my own research and try to seek different points of view or whatever. But it's like, all right, what was it like to be a friend of Daniel Day-Lewis in Salem, and just seeing him taken after everybody has accused him of being a devil worshiper, and all your authorities are like, yeah, well, he is, but why? Because we got proof. He, everybody else said
because
so.
We said.
Because we said. He said he didn't like God. All that stuff. That's what I think the one reasons I like the movie so much, I think I like it more than you do, is just that a movie that can engage me intellectually that much and make me think about something, about today and back then and further back. It makes me just examine my beliefs and shake me a little bit and kind of, I think that's what keeps your brain working. That's, I think that maybe a lot of what we see on social media, in the world, the people that are just kind of like the people that are the herd that are just following, whatever, whatever headline that you read, it's like you just lost that analytical power.
That herd mentality is exactly right. And it's turning that way with both sides of it. It kind of makes me wish we had a situation like this movie of like, well, you can be on this side and we can all agree, or you're on this side and just get the fuck away. But it's much more dangerous than that now. It's not even just the right and the left, and there's like these offshoots and whatnot. But there's herd mentality on both sides, and unfortunately, it's a very much like this. And the division being, okay, you need to either believe exactly this and you're with us, or if you believe anything that deviates from that, you're going over here. And that's unfortunately that's getting more and more black and white, red and blue, whatever you want to say. And we're becoming more and more like this movie in that sense of if it's not God's will, then it's what we have outlined as a will for people that believe what we believe. And it's becoming so vicious like this. Obviously, we're not fucking leading people to the gallows in the streets, but it is becoming a violent situation. If you're not on this side of the argument, we're going to fight you to believe on this side of the argument right now. It's obviously in a much more advanced way, using fucking smartphones and shit. It's not just people writing with quills and stuff like that. But I mean, there's a lot to it. Watching this, and like a dozen people get hanged in it, but I feel even still with the story that it tells, it doesn't even feel half as violent as the things are today with disagreements and whatnot. Obviously, it's way more visceral and way more brutal, but I don't know. I appreciate what you're saying, and a lot of my issues with the movie don't lie with the story or the telling. It's just some of the performances were not particularly good.
Listen, Jeffrey Jones did what he could.
Yeah, looked sweaty and bloated the entire time. But yeah, I think there's a lot to take away from this, and it can obviously lead itself to some interesting discussions. I think part of that, though, is you have to have the ability to see this from both sides of the equation, because if you treat it just like we did in Contrarians Corner, which I'm sure there's been many people that have watched this movie like, God, these people are fucking stupid. But then you have to, if you have the intellect and the ability to kind of lift yourself above it, like Neo, and just kind of watch it and then think about both sides of the equation, it definitely lends itself to some interesting introspection.
Yeah, I think, I'm still grappling with it, and I think it's not so much that it makes a case against movements like Me Too. It's more that it makes a case for due process. It's like you can have both. But I think that sometimes, like I said, frustration can lead you to disregard due process. And then this movie is kind of like a cautionary tale of what happens when that's the case. That maybe in an effort to achieve results, we can get on a fast track that can lead to terrible mistakes being made. I don't think that has happened, but I think that that's like the danger that's always there. And you need a reminder every now and then.
And to that, I certainly didn't take away and I hope anyone listening wouldn't take away that me and Julio, either one of us, or what we're saying or read on this is to discourage things like Me Too or speaking out or whatnot. But it's more of like there's due process is needed, and obviously in both cases, being modern and applying to this movie, revisions to that are needed, but also the things that can come from it when things like that begin, and this idea of these floodgates being opened. And like you use the example of like the pressure valve just exploding. And look, I understand the definition of irony here with these situations are two dudes talking about it. And in my case, a fucking white dude. So I certainly don't mean to preach with it, but it does. I think the entire idea, especially in the real talk of these, when we watch movies that have interesting ideals like this, is to promote discussion and kind of go with these ideas and hone in on that. And the whole idea with the floodgates being opened in any scenario is the casualties that can come along with that. And a lot of times with this and Edward Scissorhands, I think it's obviously human nature to, when these things happen, to up in arms and embrace it with this mob mentality. But like we've seen with both of these movies, and just generally speaking, I wish it worked better than it does, but it doesn't, because usually it devolves to this base level, and usually mob mentality results in the original idea behind something being lost, or at least heavily diluted. And I think that's something that's found in the two movies we've done, and unfortunately today in a lot of ways also. I feel like we got a lot of our feelings about the actual meat and potatoes, the nuts and bolts of the movie across in the first portion. I mean, it's Daniel Day-Lewis. He is the one. He is, if there ever really was a Neo, it's him. He's
no, Jet Li. Jet Li's also the one.
Oh, that's right. There was that movie, The One. There was also Floyd Mayweather versus Canelo Alvarez, which was The One. He's never going to be bad in anything. And like I said, from the moment I saw him, I was like, hell yeah, it's Daniel Day-Lewis. I'm not kidding. Like, There Will Be Blood, like, legitimately changed my life. Like, that movie was just unbelievable. And here, he's still, he had already done My Left Foot, which I believe he won an Oscar for. Is that right?
If he didn't, at least he was nominated, because I remember that.
So he was by no means wet behind the ears here, but yeah, he won Best Actor. And he had done, I know The Boxer came after this, but he had already worked with Scorsese, and he was already seasoned at the same time, and he's only made 7 movies since this. But having seen what we, yeah, The Boxer, The Boxer, Gangs of New York, Ballad of Jack and Rose, There Will Be Blood, 9, Lincoln, and Phantom Thread. But what I was going to say is, listing those movies there and then seeing this, he's obviously great. At the same time, his best stuff was yet to come. And watching him in 1996 through 2020 lenses, you might find yourself a little more critical than you should be, because you're just going to be like, no, I'm just meaning in the sense of like, I've seen There Will Be Blood. So what I mean by critical is that when this movie was over, it was like, wasn't the best thing I've seen him in. But still, I mean, it's Daniel Day-Lewis. And I know I make so many hyperbolic claims on here all the time about, oh, I'd watch this person do anything. I'd watch this person do anything. I'd watch her in anything. But like Daniel Day-Lewis is really, you stop what you're doing and pay attention. This was one of the movies too that I spent the least amount of time on my phone or doing something like on my work computer doing something, watching, just because he's so enchanting. Everything he does, you want to pay attention to. And obviously classically trained in the sense of like stage, and that really helps out here. Him, Rob Campbell, and Paul Scofield, all specifically very obvious, have spent their fair share of time on the hardwood and in front of bright lights. Whereas God bless her, Winona Ryder, and to make her not feel left out, I'll lump in Jeffrey Jones also.
Quick sort of sidebar. I didn't listen to all of the commentary, but a good chunk of it. And Nicholas Heidner mentioned that he hoped that people didn't walk into the movie automatically thinking of Winona Ryder's character as a villain, because he felt that she had a lot going on that would make her, if not entirely sympathetic, at least like you understood where she was coming from. And he was saying that, she was a young person that was having to deal with a lot of repression, and that one of the reasons she acts out is because I guess, she is, if not in love with Daniel Day-Lewis, at least heavily lusting after him. And well, this is just the only thing that she can think of. I don't know that Clearly. That comes across in the movie, because I was just complaining about it, I don't know, 10 minutes ago. I really can't tell you, even if that's what leads Winona, is that what's also like guiding all the other girls that join her? Is the answer to the question of what brought this about sexual repression? Maybe that's the intent, but I don't think that comes across.
No, I was going to say it comes across that she's lusting after Daniel Day-Lewis. Like when she sees him that first scene and she like slips and falls like on herself against the barn wall. She's like, like when he turns around and looks at her. It's like fucking Jason Biggs when Shannon Elizabeth touches his thigh. But yes, Miss Winona Ryder, the diminutive female star of the summer. It's just, I guess I take it you liked her in it. I mean, I'm not going to say this isn't in her wheelhouse, but just the problem inherently is she's versus Daniel Day-Lewis in this. And he obviously has extensive experience in not training, but you know what I mean? Like practice at this type of acting and this type of setting, where she likely does too, but not to the extent of him. So I believe, this is a better way of putting it, I believe Daniel Day-Lewis lives in 1652 in this movie. I think Winona Ryder is trying to act like someone who lives in 1652.
I can kind of see it. I don't know. I think that what muddles the waters for me is that, one, the age difference. I think that I may be giving her a pass because she's supposed to be younger. And so whenever she hits a false note, to me, it just seems like, well, because she's a child, sort of, that's pretending. So, she's not playing an actress. So to me, every time that she hits a false note, it's just like, well, those are the chinks in the armor, and it makes it even more ridiculous by design that all these adults are not seeing the bullshit that she's, pushing their way. So
you're doing like Robert Downey Jr. Tropic Thunder levels here.
I mean, because that's I was thinking about it, especially rewatching it with the commentary, because you don't really get a lot of the dialogue, but she gets to be very over the top here while everybody else is being more naturalistic. I mean, even though, yes, it is shouty, there's a lot of big acting from Daniel Day-Lewis, but Winona gets like the ridiculous acting because she has to pretend that she's seeing spirits. But, it's actually two levels, because in the real world, she's pretending that she's seeing spirits. You know what I mean? So I think that being aware of that allows me to just give her a pass. I'm like, yes,
it's a lot to ask for.
Well, yeah, but it's also like it looks silly whenever she's having her fantasies or whatever. But it's like it's supposed to be silly because it's ridiculous. There's nothing there, and she knows that, and even up to a point, fucking Paul Scofield knows that. We find out later in the movie. So I'm okay with that. I think that when it counts is when she's not pretending anything and she's having her hearts to hearts with Daniel Day-Lewis, and I think she's fine. I buy her as just like melting after him in that first time that you see them together, and then the other two times when she like ambushes him and tries to get him to fill her up, and especially when she visits him in his cell.
That
she looks like a kid,
Oh yeah, it's weird the way she's lit. It's like, ugh. But I think that also probably was intentional to remind the audience. Yeah, she's just and her dialogue in that scene too is, "I'm just a kid and this got really out of control and I had no idea how powerful just me making shit up could be. I had no idea how much it could ruin people's lives, and now like 10 people are dead." But the middle scene, that is probably my favorite scene in the movie from an acting perspective. Because, Daniel Day just rocks the shit like he always does. But that's maybe like the best Winona Ryder acting I've seen this entire summer.
Really?
That part. Dude, that is so good. Like, we understated it because we were joking about it, or I understated it. Her having like that shit-eating grin on her face, like sarcastically explaining to him all these claims that she's lied about and gotten other people imprisoned for. And like just the vengeance, as the word is used multiple times in the movie. And she has all this power. And it's the part where like in the end, obviously she realizes it's a bad thing. But in this moment, she's like high on it and she's drunk on it and realizes like all this she can do because she's this woman that people believe, and that she can like, she's like fucking Poison Ivy, like Uma Thurman, like obviously much better, but that whole, just that swagger and presence about it. And like, I can make you do any fucking thing I want you to do. You want to talk about layered, like that scene, just watching that, I was like, holy shit, this is great. It's the only scene in the movie where I think she takes the scene away from Daniel Day-Lewis.
I think we figured out that you like your Winona twisted in manipulating, because back when we did the dilemma, you were also fawning over that scene where she just tells Vince Vaughn how it's going to be.
You're right. I think I don't need a therapist. Julio's here to explain to me what I like. And
yeah. She has that face off with Paul Scofield too, and I think that she holds her own when he's basically trying to break her, and she doesn't break. She says, "I am not lying." Doesn't she say like, "Did I imagine my blood coming out of my body because of what she did to me or something?" It's
that's. But she's using some of that like old English style wording that like hearing Winona Ryder say it, like she's like, "And what be that look you giveth me," or something, and I was like, come on, you're Kim from Edward Scissorhands, let's move this along. But like I said, me thinking she's not up to task versus Daniel Day-Lewis that's not, I wouldn't say that's like an insult. That's just kind of, you're dealt a bad hand, you're not gonna live up to it in this one. But yeah, Jeffrey Jones, I think you ruined him for me for life. I mean, deservedly so. I could have gone the whole summer. You should have waited till the end of the summer when Winona had told me what a scumbag he is. But he also gets scot-free in this movie. The closest we get to some sort of justice is the fact that Bruce Davison loses all his money, but fucking Jeffrey Jones doesn't get any sort of pushback for all the shitty things he did. We talked about Scofield, great performance on his end. We mentioned it I don't know if it's true for you. My favorite story arc of the movie is Rob Campbell.
Yeah. MVP for me. I mean, I know we're talking about, the Titans like Schofield and Daniel Day-Lewis and whatever, but his character really is the one I enjoy because it's nice to see one guy that actually is awakened by this whole story and he gets to play both sides. He was the asshole judging everybody, and then he is the defenseless guy that can't get anybody else to change their mind. It's
and that thing about when he wants the lawyer there and Schofield's like, no, we don't need it. He's like, motherfucker, I signed 17 death warrants. Like, I want to make sure we're doing the right thing. And, going back to our Prometheus episode, and I'm sure there's other movies we've talked about. I know there is, and I'm blanking on one right now that talks about, like, the lifelong journey that a lot of people have with religion and their faith. And I really enjoy when a movie takes a narrative of not picking a side on it one way or the other, but showing a character that goes through the process of questioning and wondering what to believe, how to believe, and if he'll come out on the other end of that story with that same faith. So excuse me. So I really enjoyed his arc, and Rob Campbell, I thought he was really good in that role as well. And then rounding it out here, I mean, she's the only one that got an Oscar nomination for it, that being Joan Allen. She was fine.
She's good, but her character doesn't really get the big moments that everybody else does. I'm surprised. I mean, I don't know what the category was looking like for the best actor category.
Oh, I'm on it.
Okay.
It was the 69th Oscars.
I think that
there you go.
She has two big moments, and one of them is mostly it's her being silent. That's right.
It's reacting to Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yeah. Her final conversation with him when, I don't know, it rubs me the wrong way that the big thing there is that she ends up apologizing for making him cheat. I was not kidding, Contrarians Corner. I think that's kind of bullshit. I can't see what they're going for, but all things considered.
But also, that's one of those things that you do have to stop and put yourself in the time of how women were conditioned to view themselves as basically subservient, which is obviously sad. I'm glad that's changed, but that was the main thing I took away from it. It's like, God damn, why would she think this is her fault? But yeah, by that point, the movie does drag. Basically the last hour where it's just the extended court where things keep going awry and cameos keep happening. That's so by the end of the movie, I was just kind of like, let's go, let's get it over with. I would have preferred, because to me there wasn't too much in that scene. So my thing would be, it just goes straight into Daniel Day-Lewis signing that and just kind of move it along. And then that's when he looks at her and he has his meltdown about it and whatnot. So Julio,
hit me with those nominees.
1997. Care to take a guess?
97.
What would have been Best Picture in 1997?
So we're talking about 96 movies, right? Movies from 96. The English Patient.
Boom.
Not Mission Impossible, but Mission Impossible probably got sound mix and sound editing.
No, but another Tom Cruise movie was nominated for Best Picture.
No, Magnolia didn't get a Best Picture nomination, and that was later.
Come on, man.
Eyes Wide Shut? Oh, Jerry Maguire.
Yep.
So it's Jerry Maguire, Secrets and Lies, The English Patient.
Shine, which Jeffrey Rush also won Best Actor for.
There you go.
And he's fleeing the scene, Fargo. Or fleeing the interview. She doesn't say scene. She says fleeing the interview. Frances McDormand, who won Best Actress. Okay, so let's go to the Best Actor field to see why DDL got kicked out of there. Jeffrey Rush, Tom Cruise, Ralph Fiennes, Woody Harrelson, and Billy Bob Thornton for Sling Blade.
Woody Harrelson for Larry Flint?
Yes, which I have still to this day never seen. And then Best Supporting Actress, Joan Allen for The Crucible, Laura Bacall for The Mirror of Two Faces, or The Mirror Has Two Faces, Barbara Hershey, The Portrait of a Lady, Marianne Jean Baptiste for Secrets and Lies, and of course Miss Juliette Binoche for The English Patient. And fun fact for all you listeners out there, 1997 was the year that The Nutty Professor, starring Eddie Murphy, won an Academy Award for Best Makeup.
Oh, not Best Screenplay?
Beating out Ghost of Mississippi and Star Trek First Contact. Good God. Okay, last one for the 97 Oscars. The best sound category. The English Patient won for best sound, but it was a hotly contested award that year with Evita, starring Madonna, Independence Day, The Rock, and Twister. What a murderer's row of movies nominated for an Academy Award. Winding down here, Julio, would you care to know who auditioned and who was considered for the role of Abigail Williams?
96. Who was an up-and-coming young star? Claire Danes, because we were just talking about Romeo and Juliet.
It was not Claire Danes. There were several other heartthrobs of the day. Jennifer Love Hewitt, which would have completely changed this movie.
Okay, talk about not being able to buy somebody in a period drama. I mean,
can
she
you
would have
imagine
made
her versus Daniel Day-Lewis? Like, God, that is, that's fucking when Iron Man puts on his like super Iron Man suit and just beats the Hulk into the ground with like that repelling fist.
She would have made Jeffrey Jones look good, though.
Oh yeah,
period.
He would have just been staring at her cleavage the whole time. Kate Winslet, which I'm confident could have held her own.
Oh yeah.
Kirsten Dunst, who actually did a screen test, but they just decided that she looked too young. And of course, because it's the mid to late 90s, Drew Barrymore.
Oh no, I don't see it.
Yeah.
I like Drew Barrymore.
And then Sarah Michelle Gellar auditioned for the part of Mary, which would have been interesting, to say the least. And then I'm just thinking of fucking Daniel Day-Lewis, like fucking horse collaring her and dragging her out into the yard.
No, at that point you just have to cast Freddie Prinze Jr. as Proctor.
And lastly, one of the more interesting notes I found, which really shouldn't be surprising given the movie and the nature of it all, Kenneth Branagh was originally set to direct it. I mean, I don't know if that really would have changed the presentation at all.
I don't know either. I didn't. I gotta say, I was not blown away by the direction, by the visual style, and I was hearing Nicholas Heidner talk, in the commentary, and he had some cool stuff to say. And I don't know how much of it you noticed, but sometimes the camera would just kind of float, and he was talking about how they'd had this idea that maybe they could have. Not literally, but the devil possessed the camera. So sometimes the camera would move in a crazy way, and but then he followed up by saying, "I don't know that completely worked." I was like, "Okay, well at least you're acknowledging it." But I mean, it's not poorly made, but I think that, and I don't know if this is a movie that needs more like pizzazz in the visual department. Maybe you're coming for the performances, and sometimes maybe the best thing to do is to just give Daniel Day-Lewis a close up and just let him go.
Yeah, the thing that should have been accentuated in this movie from a direction standpoint and that's the performances. It's not like at any point I was distracted by something else that was going on.
Yeah, the one moment that falters, so definitely when Hale quits. We joked about it in Contrarians Corner, but it's 100% true. Did they just lose the kind of film that had his close-ups in that sequence? Because it's just such a weird shot. It's just
they
like
reshot it. Initial test screening, they're like, "What happens to Hale?" And they're like, "Shit, we forgot to explain that." That is very abrupt.
He's been such a big character up till then too. He's the Diane Wiest of this movie, where we were following him. He was a solid character, and then suddenly he's gone. He comes back a little bit at the end, but I wanted more.
It's the curse of Winona. Filmmakers just get so enchanted they forget to wrap other things up. So for all those things and more that we discussed, I think I'd be comfortable giving this movie a B-.
Yeah, that's more generous than I thought you were going to go.
There's a lot that I've figured out that I do like about it in this recording. I enjoyed it. It actually, like, parts of it got like my heart pumping and stuff. Like, anytime I can feel my body reacting to a movie, that's when I know that I'm like really invested in it. So it definitely got me engaged, and just some of the things we discussed and kind of reflected on since I watched it. There are things that are not good about it, but the good in it definitely outweighs any potential bad.
Were you with DDL at the end when he goes like, because it's my name, leave me my name? Were you into the movie, or did it take you out of the movie that he went so big?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't agree with it from like a character perspective or anything like that, but from an acting perspective, yeah. It's not like when Ryan Gosling killed Albert Brooks at the end of Drive and I was like, ah, like cheering in my seat. But at the same time, I was just like, I could admire the performance. At that point, I could obviously sense what was going to happen. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that he did go out on his shield like that.
Yeah, I this is the second time I've seen it. I saw it. I said it when it first came out, so I knew what was going to happen. I think that added to the just oppressive feeling throughout the entire movie, because I knew there was no happy ending, and that made it all feel worse. I think the first time you watch it, maybe you're thinking like we said in Contrarians Corner, that at some point somebody's going to come up and save the day, and that doesn't happen. So knowing that it was all gonna end badly, I don't know, I really like that moment. I can see how he takes a big swing, because it could easily turn somebody off. He goes so big, but I
It could have easily turned into like a Donnie Wahlberg type moment where you just have to turn away from the screen. It's so painful.
Yeah, I was very much into that conflict. Just the idea of what you believe is right versus what you just have to do to get by, that kind of stuff. It's just very compelling. That's just like completely aside of everything else that's going on in the movie that we discussed earlier in Real Talk. Just that it boils down in the end to this whole, do I do what's morally right, or do I do what's right for my family? That's just Jesus.
Yeah.
What a tough position to be put in. I'm going with 4 stars. I thought I was gonna talk myself out of that. I was thinking I was gonna end up with a 3.5 after we talked, but I think that no, it's cemented the 4 stars.
Excellent. So what's next on Summer of Winona?
Next, hopefully we get finally some relief from all this heavy stuff. Next is Homefront, where
Hell yeah.
Winona Ryder is, I think, married to either James Franco or Jason Statham, one of the two.
Either way,
it will be a blast. And both of them are in the movie. So I don't know anything else. I don't know who directs. I don't know what the plot is. I just know it seemed like an action thriller. So,
all right. So Homefront will be on the next installment of the Summer of Winona as we carry on. Now, wrapping up, moving into plugs. As always, we want to give a shout out and a thank you to the Festive Years, who provide not only our opening and closing tracks, but they've also been kind enough to provide some supplemental music during the Summer of Winona. Check out thefestiveyears.com for any and all Festive Years needs.
Our logo is from our friend and fellow podcaster, Hans Rothgieser. He designed it, he drew it, he scanned it, sent it to me. He doesn't just do logos, he does comics, he writes novels. He has a very popular series of zombie novels. He has 3 podcasts. You can find out about all of this on his website, mildemonios.pe. That's MILDEMONIOS. You can contact him on Twitter at mildemonios. Email him, mildemonios@hotmail.com. Just check out all his work. If you can speak Spanish, then you can listen to his 2 podcasts in Spanish, Nación Combi and Marginal. One's about Peruvian current affairs, the other one is about economy. And then if you only speak English, you can listen to Living in Peru, which is his podcast about immigrants to Peru. And that one is on iVox. The other 2 are in just your regular podcatchers.
And has become tradition at this point in the podcast, we do want to give a special shout out, thank you, applause to our Instagram curator, Miss Zoe Perez, for keeping on top of our Instagram posts, helping us out. She knows all the tricks of the trade in terms of getting things out there, algorithm, all that good shit, things that I am not smart enough to figure out. So appreciate that.
Now that she's taken over our Instagram, she's moving towards conquering our Facebook page, which might be a bigger challenge. But if anybody can do it, it's Zoe. I have 2 quick plugs. One is, I think I mentioned it on the last episode, or maybe I just told you off mic, but I guested on the Rabbit Ears TV podcast from our friend Ashley, who sent us a couple of clips during this summer. We talked about Game of Thrones, which I just brought up recently. Spent a solid, hour and a half talking about it. because you have a Twitter account and a Facebook, you're probably mildly aware of how season 8 of Game of Thrones, the final season, was pretty divisive. Luckily, I think Ashley and I kind of see eye to eye on the fact that it's not a disaster. There's a lot of good things that came of it. And so I didn't go into the show to fight with her for an hour and a half about Game of Thrones and how like the ending sucked. Instead, we just spent 90 minutes or whatever celebrating all the good stuff about it and commenting some things that could have been improved, theorizing about why some things didn't work when they should have, all the stuff. I had a blast. And from what she told me, the episode should be out sometime towards the end of July. So around the time that this episode comes out, it might already be out. So Rabbit Ears TV podcast, if you want to hear me and Ashley talk about Game of Thrones, then you should definitely check it out. And then I finally watched Cinema Paradiso. Have you seen it? Do you know of it? Have you heard anything? Italian movie from, I want to say, late 80s or early 90s, maybe. It'd been on my watch list since forever. It's currently on HBO Max. I finished watching it. It's like a 2-hour movie. And then under extras, I clicked on extras and it said director's cut, 3 hours. I haven't watched that one yet.
Got that Rob Zombie treatment.
Yeah. And now it makes sense. It's really good. It's so good that I would tell you to watch it to begin with. But on top of that, one of the main aspects of the movie, it's about a movie theater, the Cinema Paradiso, and it's old school projectors, and a lot of it is just seeing the projectionist dealing with film. And I was like, oh, Alex would be on cloud 9 watching this, like people threading, and then at some point he's training someone else on how to use the projector. And I was like, this is just like film porn for my co-host. So I would say we should maybe watch it, do it for the show. Not right away, but maybe sometime next year. We'll have a very special episode of The Contrarians where Alex will just talk about film and what we've lost with the transition to digital. For
more so than I already do.
For 45 minutes. Just this time you have an excuse.
There you go.
But yeah, definitely Cinema Paradiso. If you have HBO Max, it's there. If not, well, I'm sure you can find it somewhere else because it's kind of a well-known movie from the 80s.
All right. Well, that concludes the Crucible. On deck is Homefront, which I am very much looking forward to. But for now, that's going to conclude this stop on the Summer of Winona. Until next time, we are the Contrarians. We are right, and you are wrong.
Sweetly, Lorelei.